She stood on her porch with her arms crossed, her phone already on speaker. "Yes, officer, there's a woman here with a gun strapped to her waist," Karen barked, loud enough for the whole street to hear. My wife didn't even flinch. She kept watering the flowers, the pistol holstered at her side like it was part of her. I could see neighbors peeking through blinds, the tension rising with every second Karen shouted. Within minutes, sirens cut through the quiet neighborhood. 2 squad cars pulled up, brakes screeching. Karen pointed like she had just caught a fugitive. "That's her! Arrest her before she hurts someone!" she shrieked. The cops stepped out fast, hands already near their weapons, eyes locked on my wife. I braced myself, ready for a scene that could go horribly wrong in seconds. But my wife didn't panic. She calmly turned, lifted her jacket, just enough to show not just the gun, but the badge shining beside it. A federal badge. One officer froze mid-step, his mouth hanging open. The second one blinked, then straightened his back so quick it was like he'd been hit with electricity. "Ma'am?" The older officer's voice cracked before he caught himself. "Agent." His tone flipped from sharp to respectful in an instant. Karen's grin vanished, her hand dropping from her hip. The moment stretched. Then both cops snapped into form. Sharp salute, eyes steady, voices respectful. The sound of that salute echoed louder than Karen's screams ever could. And my wife? She just smiled slightly, like she had been expecting this the whole time.
Karen's jaw dropped like she had swallowed her own words. What are you doing? She's the criminal. She's walking around with a loaded gun in a family neighborhood, she shouted, her voice cracking. The officers didn't even look at her. They kept their eyes on my wife, their posture stiff, respectful. "Ma'am, is everything all right here?" the younger cop asked carefully, as if Karen had vanished into thin air. My wife nodded slowly. Everything was fine, until someone made a false emergency call. She didn't raise her voice, but every syllable landed like a hammer. The older officer glanced at Karen, his expression turning dark. "You called this in?" he asked. Karen stuttered, "Of course I did. She's dangerous. People like her shouldn't even live here. This is an HOA community, and—" "That's enough." The officer cut her off sharply. His hand went to the notepad on his belt. "Making a false report is a crime. You do realize that, right?" Karen froze, then tried to laugh it off. "I was just protecting the neighborhood." But my wife tilted her head, her calm smile never fading. "Funny thing, I was about to meet with the sheriff later today anyway. He'll be very interested in how much time his deputies had to waste because of this woman's lies." Karen's face drained of color. She had no idea the storm she'd just walked into. And I could tell my wife was only getting started. Karen tried to backpedal, her words tumbling over each other. "Wait, no, you don't understand. I'm the head of this HOA. I have authority here." She waved her hands around like the whole street was her courtroom. "We have strict rules. Guns aren't allowed in sight, and—" The younger cop's patience snapped. "Ma'am, you don't make the law, and you definitely don't outrank federal jurisdiction." His tone was firm now, his notebook already filling with notes. I watched Karen's face twitch, the fake confidence draining out of her. She wasn't used to people pushing back. She was used to people folding under her rules, her fines, her made-up notices. But not this time. Not against my wife. Just then, a black SUV rolled around the corner, pulling up behind the cruisers. The tinted window slid down, and the sheriff himself leaned out, sunglasses on, scanning the scene. The cop stiffened even more. Karen's eyes lit up with false hope. "Sheriff, finally! Arrest her! She's got a weapon!" The sheriff stepped out, boots hitting the pavement with weight. He walked past Karen like she wasn't even there. His eyes went straight to my wife, and then his whole face softened. "Agent," he said with a respectful nod, "didn't expect to see you out here today." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Karen's smug grin collapsed completely. and for the first time, she realized she hadn't called in backup. She had just dug her own grave. The sheriff adjusted his hat, his gaze finally shifting to Karen. "So, you're the one who called this in?" His voice carried that slow, heavy tone that made every word feel like a warning. Karen puffed herself up again, desperate to regain ground. "Yes, I'm the HOA president. She was breaking community rules, walking around armed like some outlaw. I was only protecting the residents." The sheriff's jaw tightened. Community rules don't override state law, and they sure as hell don't override federal authority. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the weight of it pressed down like thunder. "Do you know who you just tried to have arrested?" Karen blinked rapidly, her lips trembling. "She's just some homeowner." "She," the sheriff pointed at my wife, "is the federal agent who trains half the SWAT teams in this state. You just wasted my deputy's time on a lie. That's obstruction. That's false reporting. And that's not going away." The neighbors who had been peeking out their windows were now opening doors, stepping onto porches, watching the scene unfold. Karen's authority, the power she waved around so carelessly, was crumbling right in front of them. My wife crossed her arms, calm as ever. "I told you earlier, Sheriff, this neighborhood has been a problem. Looks like the problem finally showed itself." Karen spun in circles, desperate. "You can't do this to me. I'm in charge here." But the sheriff only shook his head slowly. "Not anymore." And that was when the first neighbor clapped, then another, and another. The sound of applause spread down the street, and Karen's face turned crimson. Karen's eyes darted wildly as the clapping grew louder. She raised her hands, shouting over the noise. "Stop it! You all signed the HOA agreement! I'm the authority here!" But her voice cracked, desperation leaking through every word. The sheriff didn't even bother answering. He just looked at the younger deputy and nodded. The deputy pulled out a small body cam device and held it up. "Good news, ma'am," he said. "This whole incident is recorded. Your call, your accusations, and your threats. It'll go straight into evidence." Karen froze, her mouth hanging open. Then, like a cornered animal, she lashed out. She stormed up the porch steps, jabbing a finger toward my wife. "You set me up! You don't even live here legally! I've seen your name isn't on the HOA roster! You're trespassing!" For the first time, my wife let out a short laugh. Calm, sharp, cutting. Trespassing? That's rich. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder, flipping it open for the sheriff. Inside were land deeds, signed and sealed. This house, this land, and 3 acres around it, all in my name, bought outright. HOA has 0 jurisdiction here. The sheriff's eyebrows rose slightly as he looked over the documents. He turned to Karen. "She owns more land than this entire block combined, which means you've been harassing her under false authority." The crowd of neighbors erupted in murmurs. Some looked shocked. Others smirked like they had been waiting years for Karen to get knocked off her pedestal. Karen's knees buckled, but she still tried to bark back. No, that's impossible! We have rules!" But the only thing left in her voice was panic. Karen's panic snapped into rage. She lunged toward the sheriff, her finger jabbing wildly in the air. "You're all in on this! She doesn't belong here! None of you are safe if people like her can just—" "Ma'am," the sheriff's voice cut like steel, "that's enough." He motioned to his deputy. "Cuff her." The deputy stepped forward, but Karen jerked back, flailing her arms. "Don't touch me! I'm the HOA president! You can't arrest me in my own neighborhood!" Her voice was shrill, echoing off every house. The neighbors, once hesitant, now laughed openly. Phones were raised, cameras recording every second. Karen's perfect image of control was dissolving into a viral moment she'd never escape.
My wife stood silent, arms crossed, watching it unfold with a calm authority that made the cops look like they were following her lead, not the other way around. The deputy caught Karen's wrist, twisting gently but firmly. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed down the street. Karen screamed, "This is illegal! You'll regret this! I'll sue every last one of you!" The sheriff didn't even blink. "Save it for court. You're being charged with filing a false police report, harassment, and disorderly conduct." He turned to my wife with a respectful nod. "Agent, sorry you had to deal with this circus." Karen thrashed in the cuffs, her voice breaking. "You can't do this to me. I am the law here." But nobody believed her anymore, not with her wrists chained and her neighbors cheering. The deputy guided Karen toward the cruiser, but she twisted around, her face red and wet with rage. "Don't you people get it? Without me, this place will fall apart. I'm the only thing keeping order." A neighbor across the street shouted back, "Order? You fined me for planting tomatoes in my backyard." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Another neighbor yelled, "Yeah, and you towed my car because it was too red." Phones were up everywhere now, neighbors shouting their grievances, each one another nail in Karen's coffin. Karen tried to shout over them, "Lies! All lies!" But the chorus of voices grew louder, drowning her out. It wasn't just the sheriff or the cops anymore. It was the whole community turning against her, exposing every petty abuse she had piled onto them. The sheriff paused, watching the scene, then looked back at Karen. "Sounds like you've been busy breaking more rules than you've been making." My wife finally spoke, her tone calm but sharp as glass. "This is what happens when you try to control people with fear. Eventually, they stop being afraid." The line hit like thunder. The neighbors cheered, clapping and whistling, their voices rising in unity. Karen sagged against the cruiser, cuffed and defeated, her power stripped away by the very people she thought she ruled. The deputy opened the back door, but not before one last humiliation, dozens of cameras catching Karen's tear-streaked face as she was lowered inside. And for once, the street felt free. The cruiser door slammed shut, muffling Karen's furious screams. Neighbors stood in clusters, whispering, laughing, recording, finally breathing easier. The street felt lighter, like a storm had passed. The sheriff turned back to my wife. "We'll process her at county. With the reports, the body cam footage, and these witnesses, she won't be running any HOA again." His tone carried finality, like a gavel had just dropped. My wife nodded. "Good. People like her think power comes from fear. Real power comes from protecting the people, not bullying them." The younger deputy hesitated, then asked, "Agent, do you want to press federal charges too?" For a moment, silence fell. My wife looked at me, then at the neighbors, families holding kids, veterans in old ball caps, couples who'd been fined and threatened for years. She shook her head. "No, the state can handle her. I just wanted this community safe again." The sheriff gave a small smile. "Fair enough. But if you ever want a seat on the county board, you'd have the whole town behind you." That line got another cheer from the crowd. People clapped, shouted thanks, even saluted her as if she were already their leader. Karen ruled through paper notices and threats. My wife had earned respect with nothing but calm strength and a badge. As the cruiser rolled away, I slipped an arm around her shoulder. She finally exhaled, a quiet laugh escaping. 42 seconds, she whispered, almost to herself. I frowned. "What?" 42 seconds, she repeated, her eyes fixed on the fading sirens. That's how long it took for them to go from ready to draw on me to saluting me. I looked at her, proud and a little in awe, and in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about one HOA fight. It was about freedom, our right to stand our ground, protect our homes, and never bow to false power. Because in America, you don't salute fear, you salute honor.